That night, my wife went to a party with her best friend. When she came back home, she didn't just bring back glitter on her dress and perfume on her skin. She brought back a secret, so devastating, it destroyed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I loved her. I trusted her. I built my life around her. But the most terrifying part of this story isn't that she betrayed me. It's what I did after I found out. And believe me, she never saw it coming. If you enjoy dark relationship stories, betrayal stories, revenge stories, and real-life-style emotional drama, make sure you stay until the very end. Because this story doesn't just end with heartbreak. It ends with a revenge so cold, so calculated, that it changed everyone involved. Let's begin. My name is Adrian Blake. I wasn't a millionaire. I wasn't some powerful, untouchable man. But I was solid, steady, loyal, the kind of man who worked hard, stayed honest, and believed that if you loved someone the right way, they would never have a reason to destroy you. And when I married Victoria Blake, I genuinely believed I had found peace. Victoria was the kind of woman who made elegance look effortless. She didn't need attention to own a room. She didn't need to try too hard. She was naturally magnetic, beautiful, polished, composed, the kind of woman who made people turn their heads without even realizing they were doing it. But what I loved most about her wasn't her beauty. It was the softness in the way she spoke to me, the way she smiled when I came home late, the way she reached for my hand in public without even thinking about it, the way she made ordinary evenings feel like something worth remembering. Our marriage, at least in the beginning, felt perfect. Morning coffee together, late-night conversations in bed, plans for the future, trips we wanted to take, the kind of house we wanted one day, the kind of family we wanted to build. And that's the cruel thing about betrayal. It rarely begins on the day you discover it. No, it begins much earlier, while you're still calling it love. Victoria had a best friend named Sienna Hart. Sienna was social, stylish, always busy, always going somewhere. Private parties, rooftop events, girls' nights, brunches, late dinners. She was the kind of friend who always had a plan. And I never objected. Why would I? I trusted my wife. I wasn't controlling. I never believed in suffocating someone in the name of love. If she wanted freedom, I gave it. If she wanted trust, I gave it. If she wanted space, I gave it. What I didn't know was that some people don't value trust because it's sacred. They value it because it gives them room to lie. It was a Friday night when everything began to fall apart. Victoria was getting ready for a party Sienna had invited her to. She was wearing a black silk dress I had bought her months earlier. Her hair was pinned back just enough to show her neck. Her perfume filled the room. Warm, expensive, familiar. I remember standing by the door, looking at her, and smiling. I said, "Every man at that party is going to hate me tonight." She laughed and asked, "Why would they hate you?" And I said, "Because I'm the one who gets to come home with you." She rolled her eyes, but she smiled. That soft smile. That same smile I had trusted with my entire heart. Before she left, she grabbed her bag and said, "Don't wait up. It might get late." I walked her to the door. "Stay safe," I told her. She kissed my cheek and said, "Always." Then she left. And without knowing it, I had just watched the last innocent moment of my marriage walk out the front door. At 11:14 p.m., I sent her a text. "Everything all right?" A few minutes later, she replied, "Yes, all good. Still here. Home soon." Midnight came. Then, 1 in the morning, then 2. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. Something felt off, not enough to accuse, not enough to panic, just enough to make every minute feel heavier than the last. I called her, no answer. I called again. Still nothing. At exactly 2:37 in the morning, the front door opened. Victoria stepped inside. Her heels were in one hand. Her lipstick was slightly smudged. Her hair was a little messy. And there was something about her. Something I couldn't explain in that moment, but instantly hated. There was perfume. There was alcohol. And under all of it, something unfamiliar. I stood up and asked, "What happened? Why didn't you answer your phone?" She avoided my eyes as she took off her shoes and said, "The music was too loud. I didn't hear anything, and Sienna wasn't feeling well, so everything got delayed." And right there, I had a choice. Push harder. Or let it go. And because I loved her, I let it go. That was my mistake. Not trusting her, but trusting her, after my instincts had already started whispering that something was wrong. What I didn't know that night was that the lie had already gone much further than I could imagine. And a few days later, Victoria would say 6 words to me. That would turn suspicion into certainty. 6 words. That changed everything. After the party, Victoria changed. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way anyone else would notice. But I noticed. Because when you love someone deeply, you can feel distance before you can prove it. She became more guarded with her phone. She smiled at messages she never explained. She took calls in other rooms. She stopped telling me little details about her day. She seemed present physically, but emotionally, she was somewhere else. At first, I tried to justify it. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was tired. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe marriage was just changing. But some truths don't arrive through logic. They arrive through feeling, and I could feel it. One morning, she ran to the bathroom and got sick. When she came out, I asked if she was okay. She forced a smile and said, "Probably just something I ate." A few days later, she told me she had a doctor's appointment. I offered to go with her. She told me it was nothing serious, just routine. That evening, she came home holding a file in her hand. She stood in the middle of the living room for a moment, like she was preparing herself. Then she looked at me and said, "Adrian, I'm pregnant." I don't know how to describe what that moment felt like. It wasn't anger first. It wasn't even heartbreak first. It was something colder, something more terrifying. Because there was something Victoria didn't know. Months before our wedding, I had been in a serious accident, and after that accident, doctors told me my fertility had been severely damaged. There was treatment. There was hope, maybe, but the chances were low. Very low. I hadn't told Victoria yet. I kept waiting for the right time, the right moment, the right words. But standing there, listening to her tell me she was pregnant, I knew with horrifying certainty that the baby she was carrying was not mine. And in that one moment, my entire marriage cracked open. A lot of people imagine betrayal as shouting, broken glass, screaming, tears, violence. But that's not what happened. I didn't explode. I didn't accuse her. I didn't ask who the father was. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at her and said, "Are you sure?" She searched my face carefully and asked, "You're not upset, are you?" That sentence burned through me. Not upset? How could she stand there, carrying another man's child, and still ask me that with a straight face? But I kept my expression calm. I said, "I'm just surprised." And she exhaled. As if she was relieved. As if she had been waiting to see whether the lie would survive. That night, she slept peacefully, and I stayed awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory we had ever made. Her wedding vows, her smile in the kitchen, her hand in mine. The way she used to say I would never hurt you, our plans, our dreams, our future. And I kept asking myself one question over and over again. Was any of it real? By morning, something inside me had changed. Love didn't disappear overnight, but trust did. And once trust dies, love becomes something unrecognizable. That was the morning I made my decision. I would not react in anger. I would respond in silence. And silence, when guided by truth, can become the most terrifying revenge of all. From that day on, I stopped seeing Victoria as my wife. I started seeing her as evidence, and what I found next made the betrayal even worse, because the other man wasn't a stranger. He was someone I knew, someone I trusted, someone who had sat in my home. And when I discovered who he was, that's when revenge stopped being an idea and became a plan. From that day forward, I watched everything, not like a jealous husband, like a man collecting proof. I paid attention to times, patterns, excuses, messages, the names she used, the names she avoided, the moments she seemed nervous, the moments she seemed too calm. Then, one afternoon, she left her phone on the dining table. The screen lit up. There was a message from an unsaved number. It said, "We need to talk tomorrow." This is getting messy. I felt the blood drain from my face. But I said nothing. I just memorized the number. Later that night, another message from the same number lit up the screen while she was in the shower. Does he suspect anything? That was it. No more doubt. No more denial. No more maybe. This was an affair. A real one. A planned one. And I was living inside it like a fool. The next day, using an old number, I called him. The phone rang twice. Then, a man answered. Hello? That one word did more damage than a confession ever could. I ended the call immediately. A man. Now I knew. Now I just needed a face. A few days later, Victoria said she had another appointment. I left work early and followed her from a distance. Her cab moved through the city and never once headed toward the clinic. Instead, it stopped outside a quiet cafe hidden behind a row of expensive shops. And there he was, waiting for her. He stood when she arrived. She sat across from him. A few minutes later, she was crying. He reached across the table and held her hand. Then leaned closer, speaking to her like a man trying to control a situation that had gone too far. I sat in my car and watched my marriage die in broad daylight. I could have stormed in. I could have humiliated them on the spot. I could have turned the entire cafe into a crime scene of truth. But pain gives you two options: recklessness or precision. That day, I chose precision. It took me less than a week to uncover the rest. And when I did, the betrayal became even darker. The man's name was Sebastian Cole. And he wasn't some stranger my wife met at a party. He wasn't a random man from a bar. He wasn't a passing mistake. He was an old friend of mine. Someone I had known for years. Someone who had been in my house. Someone who had shaken my hand. Someone who had laughed with me. Someone I had trusted. And all that time, he had been sleeping with my wife. That's when the entire picture finally became clear. Sienna wasn't just a friend. She was cover. The party wasn't just a party. It was access. And the pregnancy wasn't just betrayal. It was an attempt to trap me inside a lie so complete, it would have rewritten the rest of my life. Victoria wasn't just cheating on me. She was prepared to let me raise another man's child under my name. That realization changed everything. My heartbreak became colder, my sadness became sharper, and my revenge became focused. I didn't want screaming. I didn't want violence. I didn't want chaos. I wanted truth. I wanted timing. And I wanted both of them to feel their world collapse at the exact same moment. And that's when I started planning something they never could have imagined. I didn't confront her. I didn't confront him. I didn't warn anyone. Instead, I invited them both to the one place where all lies would die. Our wedding anniversary. The first thing I did was secure myself legally. The apartment was in my name. My finances were documented. Anything shared was reviewed and protected. Then I met with a lawyer. I brought everything with me: medical records, fertility reports, dates, timelines, call patterns, photographs, evidence, proof. I built a perfect chain of truth. No guesses, no emotions, no loose ends. The night of the party, the late night calls, the fake appointments, the meetings with Sebastian, the pregnancy timeline, everything. And I told no one. Not my family, not her family, not friends, not even Sebastian. Silence became my weapon. Meanwhile, Victoria went on acting like everything was under control. She looked at baby names, talked about the future, mentioned nursery colors. One evening she even rested her head on my shoulder and asked, "Do you think you'll be a strict father?" That almost broke me. But I stayed still. One night she looked at me and said, "You've been distant lately." And inside, all I could think was, you buried the version of me who used to love you without fear. But aloud I only said, "A lot has been on my mind." She accepted that answer. Why wouldn't she? She thought I was still blind. She thought she had won. And that arrogance made my revenge even easier. Our second wedding anniversary was coming up, so one evening I said to her casually, "We should celebrate properly this year. Invite close family, a few friends. Make it special. We can even share the pregnancy news." Her face lit up instantly. And in that moment, I knew for sure. She believed she had escaped. She thought my silence meant acceptance. She thought the lie was working. She thought she could continue living in my home, carrying another man's child, hidden safely behind my name. So I arranged everything myself. A private hall, elegant decor, soft lighting, a projector screen, a guest list designed with surgical precision. I invited my mother, her parents, a few close relatives, mutual friends, and then, very carefully, I invited Sienna Hart and Sebastian Cole. Sebastian accepted almost immediately. That's the thing about arrogant people. They mistake confidence for safety. And sometimes, they walk right into their own destruction smiling. The evening looked beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that it almost felt cruel. Warm amber lights, white flowers, crystal glasses, wedding photos displayed at the entrance, guests arriving in elegant clothes. Smiles, compliments, laughter. People kept saying the same thing. "You two look perfect together." Perfect. What a dangerous word. Victoria wore a deep red dress that night and looked flawless. Sebastian arrived polished, controlled, but tense if you knew where to look. Sienna moved through the room smiling like she had every right to be there. Dinner began. Drinks were poured. Conversations flowed. The performance was in full motion. Then, just before dessert, I stood up and picked up the microphone. The room slowly quieted. Victoria looked at me and smiled, expecting a sweet anniversary speech. Something romantic. Something safe. I smiled back. Then I said, "Thank you all for being here tonight. This evening means a great deal to me. Not just because it marks another year of marriage, but because tonight is also about truth." That was the first moment her expression changed. Just slightly. Just enough. Then I turned toward the projector screen. At first, our wedding photographs appeared. Guests smiled. Then honeymoon pictures, holiday memories, family dinners, the image of a happy marriage. Then the screen went black, and one sentence appeared in white letters. "Trust dies quietly." The room froze. Then came the next slide, the date of the party, then call logs, then screenshots of suspicious messages, then a photo of Victoria sitting across from Sebastian in the cafe, then another image of his hand over hers, then the phone number connection. I heard someone gasp. Another person shifted in their chair so hard it scraped the floor. No one knew where to look. At me. At Victoria. At Sebastian. At the screen. Victoria's face lost all color. Sebastian went completely still. Sienna looked like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Victoria stood up and whispered, "Adrian, what are you doing?" And into the microphone I said, telling the truth. She shook her head. "Please, not here." I looked directly at her and said, "You should have thought about that before bringing another man's betrayal into my home." No one spoke. No one dared interrupt. Then I held up the medical file. And I said, "There is something Victoria never knew. Before we got married, I was in an accident. My medical reports make it clear that my fertility was severely affected." I looked around the room. Everyone was frozen. So when my wife told me she was pregnant, I already knew the child could not be mine. And in that moment, everything collapsed. Victoria started crying immediately. "Adrian, please, please listen to me." But I didn't stop. "Not now. Not after everything," I said. This was not confusion. This was not one bad decision. This was an affair, a sustained lie, and an attempt to place another man's child under my name. Her mother covered her mouth. Her father looked like he might collapse. My own mother sat in tears. Then I turned to Sebastian and said, "Would you like to explain?" He lowered his eyes. Of course he did. Men like him only look confident while they think no one knows. Victoria stepped toward me, crying harder. I made a mistake, and I stepped back. One step, just enough. Then I said quietly, "No, a mistake is accidental. This took planning." Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. I handed it to her. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely open it. Inside were divorce papers, and beneath them, a legal notice. She looked up at me in disbelief. "You already filed this?" And I said, "You didn't just betray me. You tried to make me the legal father of another man's child. You tried to attach my name, my future, and my life to a lie." Sebastian stood halfway and said, "Adrian, listen." I looked at him once, just once, and he stopped speaking. "Then," I said, "friendship died the moment you sat in my home, drank with me, and still chose to betray me." Then I turned to Sienna. "And people like you don't just hide affairs. You help bury lives for the first time that night." Her expression cracked. Then I put the microphone down. No shouting, no violence, no chaos. Just truth. Pure, undeniable, public truth. That was my revenge. I didn't need to destroy them. I only needed to reveal them. That night, Victoria left with her parents. Sebastian tried reaching out afterward, but I blocked him everywhere. The legal process began. Families fractured. Friends whispered. Some sympathized. Some gossiped. Some acted shocked as if betrayal doesn't live in more homes than people. But what unsettled people most wasn't my anger. It was my control. I had every reason to lose my mind. And instead, I came prepared. With proof. With timing. With dignity. Weeks later, Victoria sent me a long message. She said she had made a terrible mistake. She said she never meant for it to go this far. She said she had been confused. She said she never wanted to lose me. She said she still loved me. I read every word, then deleted it. Because people like that don't always want love. Sometimes they want safety. Options. A backup plan. One man for excitement, another for stability, and I refused to be the man waiting at home while she gambled with my life. Sebastian sent a message too. Short, simple, pathetic. It said, "Things got out of hand." No, they didn't. Everything happened exactly the way they chose it to happen. What got out of hand was consequence. People later asked me, "How did you get revenge?" And every time, my answer was the same. My revenge was not making her cry. My revenge was making sure she could never again stand where she once stood and call it hers. My revenge was not violence. It was removal. Removal from my home, from my future, from my name, from the life she assumed she could continue living after betrayal. My revenge was that the house she thought would protect her lies closed to her forever. My revenge was that I did not let pain turn me into a smaller man. And maybe the darkest part of all was that I left her with the man she chose. Because relationships built in deceit rarely survive peace. A woman who betrays one man teaches the next man to doubt her. A man who steals trust never gets to enjoy being trusted. Months later, I heard that things between Victoria and Sebastian had already started falling apart. Suspicion, blame, silence, guilt. The same dishonesty that brought them together was now tearing them apart. And me? I chose to heal. Not quickly, not perfectly, but deliberately. Therapy, work, long walks, silence, prayer, distance, time. The scars stayed, but scars are not weakness. A wound bleeds. A scar proves you survived. Even now, people sometimes ask me one question: did you ever forgive her? And my answer is simple. Forgiveness and return are not the same thing. Maybe one day I will let go of every last piece of anger. Maybe one day I will leave all judgment to God and carry none of it in my chest. But that will never mean trust can be rebuilt where it was deliberately murdered. It will never mean love can restore what deception buried alive. Because some marriages do not end when the papers are signed. They end the night trust dies. And mine died the night my wife went to a party with her best friend and came home carrying not just another man's child, but the destruction of everything I believed in. Still, she made one mistake. She thought betrayal only had one ending. She thought I would beg. She thought I would break. She thought I would stay. She thought my love would protect her from consequences. But sometimes, the betrayed person does not collapse. Sometimes he becomes quiet. Sometimes he watches. Sometimes he gathers every piece of truth in silence and waits. And then, he makes one final move, so clean, so cold, so complete, that the people who betrayed him realize too late they never really knew him at all. If this story shocked you, if you felt the betrayal, the silence, the pain, and the revenge, then let me know in the comments. Did Adrian do the right thing? Or should he have confronted them earlier? And if you want more dark betrayal stories, revenge stories, marriage secrets, and emotionally intense relationship dramas, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next story might be even darker than this one. She betrayed me in secret. I answered in truth. And that truth became the punishment she never imagined.